I missed out on the BBC micro revolution. By the time this machine came out, I'd already left school, and honestly I was in university and I was playing with Commodore pets at university and the Commodore 64 at home. What did I want with yet another? But now, here it is. Let's take a look. Now, I'm not going to give you a walkthrough of the machine because, quite frankly, I don't know a lot about it. Like I said, I was into Commodores at the time that the machine was in schools. I was not in school, so I never used one. But I got a book. However, I haven't yet read it, so I don't know. But the Aegon Light uses BBC Basic, and we've had this on the channel before, so yay. I got this machine back in the summer and it did not look this good. You think that looks good? Well, let me show you how it looked before. Now, it arrived very, very nicely packed in this huge metal instrument case. And the instrument case was full of nice protective black foam. Unfortunately, that nice protective black foam was about 40 years old and turning to horrible sticky goo, which it did all over this machine, all over the insides probably. So I spent a good couple of hours cleaning it off, and this is it. That key was present in the listing on eBay, but it is not on the machine now. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe it fell inside. It was not in the case anyway. One thing you have to be careful of in eBay listings is what they don't show you in the photographs, because what they didn't show in this photograph, and I didn't pick up on it because unless you know, you're not necessarily looking for it. There's a whopping big hole in the side of the machine, and that has got a 3.5-inch floppy drive in it. You can see that it's not very well secured. It wobbles about, and the bezel for it was loose in the box and quite bent out of shape. But I've got plenty of other bezels. In fact, I've got one that is a better fit because it's a closer colour. So yeah, and of course that was covered in goo as well. So that had to be cleaned. I'm not going to switch it on. I'm not sure that I've got the appropriate cable for it. It says RGB. The video out, this BNC thing is still actually full of foam. So yeah, but we're going to take this apart and give it a good clean out on the inside. I don't think I've got a video cable for it. Maybe it would take a Commodore one, I don't know. We're going to have to check the pinouts. But before I plug it in, you can see just from that, this horrible stuff is still coming out. Before we plug it in, there are reefer caps in the power supply, and these are known to be very explodey. And so I've taken the liberty of getting a cap kit. And this has the appropriate capacitors to replace these 2 reefers and 1 electrolytic. I think there are more in the power supply, but it didn't come in the cap kit. The cover here is missing. I'm not sure what would normally go in there, but that's normally a press out cover that usually is still there, but sometimes isn't. There is a switch here that I have no idea what it's for. It may well be a power switch, although that's a power switch, so why would it be any different? That might be for something else. Let's take it apart and see what we've got inside. So, I don't know where the screws are. 2 screws there. That looks like another screw and another screw that are missing, and some screws on the back. Never taken one of these apart, no idea what's inside it. Let's see what we get. Screw is kind of rusty. Rusty McScrew. Also, I don't know what screws are necessary to remove and what screws are sort of like surplus or superfluous. So we'll just take them all out. These are going to be for the power supply. I'm not going to take those out just yet. But look at that. Aha! Yay! Yay-ish. We are going to need to do some cleaning. Does this lift off? Yes, it does. So I presume that comes out there. What is that? Anybody know? Looks like something has been going on with the speaker. I'm going to carefully shake that. So I'm going to put that to one side. We were going to be cleaning that. Ah, it looks like there should be a nut holding that on, and that nut is missing, and that is why the drive is wobbling about. I hardly know where to put it so that it doesn't actually corrupt the room. Now that's interesting. This connector on the back is obviously paralleled up to the floppy connector. There is no sign of the missing keycap. So we've got some ROMs in the ROM sockets. Yamaha Basic 2 DFS 2.20. And then that's just a Yamaha on the label. So I don't know what that is. It's a 65257 Meta 3.40A eDIM. Meta A Sim. I don't know what those are. Perhaps if you can know what they are, you can tell me in the comments. And this is the power supply. I think the first thing to do is going to be to clean out all this remaining gunk, and then we'll come back and have a more detailed look at it. Let's undo the screws, take the motherboard out, take the power supply out, and then just clean everything. I like that they've put little plastic washers on. I've already unplugged this from that connector, but I can't get it out really until we have removed the board. So remember where all these wires go: purple, black, red, black, red, red, black. Because they're going to want to go back. I don't know what that board is underneath there. So that was just basically tacked across the 5 volts. That's interesting. That will go outside during daylight hours to give that a clean, as will this. Actually, right. Let's undo these screws and take the power supply off. These are all kind of rusty. Now these are the 2 reefers. There's one here stored somewhere. You can see that's definitely got a big crack in it, so that was bound to be going. And the other one is under here, so we're going to have to take this board out. Might be finding some new screws for that. I attempt to do that, I'm going to clean this bench up at least. One of the less talked about benefits of PCBs from our sponsor PCBWay is they are really good at cleaning up benches. Much better than a brush. There we go, job done. Of course, there are lots of PCBs you can get from PCBWay. Some of these are ones that I've designed myself and made. Others are ones like this one, which that's an IEEE 488 interface for a C64. They are shared projects, so somebody else has designed those and PCBWay acts as a store that you can buy them from. Starting at $5, they take about a week to arrive. And that's not all. They also do 3D printing, CNC machining, sheet metal work. I spent about 4 hours putting ICs and LEDs and resistors and so on this board. PCBWay will assemble that for you, all that SMD stuff. Give them a bill of materials and they'll do the job. Check them out, www.pcbway.com. So let's see if we can take this power supply apart. There's still bits of foam falling out of it, and no doubt they will continue to until we have it stripped down. So it looks like there are 3 screws because there are 3 captive nuts and they are gunked in. That's a good sign in the sense that nobody's been in here before us. It's a bad sign in the sense that the gunk is in the holes and I need to chip it out. So I think I'm going to try a sharper blade. Obviously not going to turn the screw, but it might at least remove the glue. That's coming. It goes without saying, so I won't say it. But if you'd like to know what I would have said if I was going to say it and it didn't go without saying, don't muck around with power supplies unless you know what you're doing, because they store some really nasty voltages on these capacitors and things, and of course they've got mains on the mains bits. So I've got a feeling this is all tied in. So cable tie here. Okay, here we go. I thought these were just push fit. So that is out. That took a lot of effort. These were really hard to get off. So that doesn't bode too well for putting them back. But we can now give this a bit of a brush down. Get the remaining crap out. And then we will clean the bench again. Okay, so cable ties. I'm guessing that is heat shrink because presumably we're going to need to replace these. Cable gland, well, I didn't actually take that out, but you never know. And 2 reefers and this one. That I think is going to be this guy here. So flux is your friend. I'm going to try these 2 first. That's the wrong one. It's not that after all. So at least the PCB looks clean. Double check there's a plus on there. So that can go in. Good, that looks fine. There we go. So now we can figure out how to start putting this back. There we go. So this one is cracked right along there, cracked over there, so that was going to blow. This one, yeah, is also cracked around there and around there. So that was also going to blow. We have saved ourselves the smelly stuff. So the case is nice and clean now. I've done the keyboard and the top part as well. The floppy drive is still shedding bits of gunk, but since that was not original, I'm not going to worry about that for now. So I think we can start putting things back together. So this is the power for the floppy drive. We're going to take that off. Actually, I might do something with that BNC. It's still shedding little bits here and there. Because that is the composite video out. And we might need to use that if I don't find a suitable cable for the RGB. I've got some coax cable here which ends in a standard RCA connector. And I've trimmed the other end, and that's going to go to our monitor, and we're going to wire that into here, and basically that will be the video, and any one of these will be the ground, because if you look on the back you'll see that these 3 are actually connected together. Oh look, we're still shedding stuff. It's caught in amongst the chips, that's what it is, I think. And actually there's some of it in these connectors. You're going to see a lot of this. Desk cleaning sponsored by PCB. Okay, so that is going to go to our monitor at some point. So let's start to assemble it. This will go in here. I think it goes in this way forwards. Oops. like that. And then drops back. I'm not going to screw that down just for the moment because we might want it taken out. Now if anyone knows what this board is, please let me know in the comments. I've seen some other videos where this thing was the other way up. I have no idea what it is. I'm not going to take it off. We might need to recap these at some point. And I think there's one under there as well. There's only 3 of them. They look pretty much okay, I think. But you never know. We might need to do that. And there's these 2 here as well. 3 here, sorry. It probably wouldn't be too remiss to do those, but we'll leave them for the time being. So in fact, before we put this in, actually no, we can screw one thing down. I'm entirely not knowing what I'm doing. So we have these chunky flat screws with the washer underneath. Now I'm just going to put one in here loose. And don't forget you need to wind it back half a turn so that it clicks into the thread. So now we've got to get this back in. And we're going to need to thread the mains plug through the hole. And it goes in there like that. And we need to put these rusty screws back in. Right, now this goes onto here. And then these go, they are actually labelled, so this is the short one. VCC, remember this is what was being used to power the disk drive. And finally over here, again that's VCC, and that's 0 volts. Now we want the keyboard. There are supposedly nut and bolts that hold the keyboard in, but I didn't see any. What is this mess? I think that went to somewhere. I'm wondering if that went to this really weird switch. Whether this switch was actually to turn on and off the sound. Maybe. It's not attached to anything now anyway. But we've got a situation where, yeah, that's almost breaking the red wire. So what we have to do is reattach that red wire, because this is a right bodge. We need to have the speaker going in order to see if it's actually working. Well, I suppose we could just turn it on and see if we get a picture. Let's plug the keyboard in. There we go. I think that goes there like that. Slots in those slots. Sorry about the angle, but this is purely to see if it works, because depending on if it works is what we're going to do next. So it's on at the mains. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. It won't beep. It won't do anything else either. Let's just check that we've got some voltage. So we ought to be able to go from here to here. And we have nothing. No, what about this pin here? Round. No, we've got nothing on anything. Okay. So I've checked the fuse in the plug, and the fuse in the plug is okay. We can just double check that. Pop that out. Here's the meter. Beep, beep, beep. There we go, that's okay. And we can check the fuse in here, which I've taken out. Fuse is underneath this, so I can poke it in this side. And we can get in there this side. That is okay. I'm afraid when it comes to debugging these things, that's about as far as my knowledge goes. Nothing looks obviously exploded or burnt out. And we didn't see anything when we had it apart before. It might just be easier to go and get a modern replacement power supply, because they are pretty readily available. What do you think? Answers on a postcard. A week has passed, the snow has come and gone, the postie has been, and we have some more goodies. So first off, we've got some keycaps. These are nicely 3D resin printed, and they need painting, but we can stick one on here. There we go. Keep the other one in reserve. That will of course come off and get painted at some point, but that will do for now. Second thing we've got is a BNC to RCA adapter. Sorry it's all crinkly. So that goes onto this thing at the back here and takes a standard video connector like that. This means that the cable that we put in there earlier is kind of redundant. I've also got this, which goes from the RGB output to a SCART, so we can plug in the SCART into our monitor, which that will be another alternative. And this is probably the best quality of video that we can get. And finally, because none of this makes any difference if we can't get the machine to run, so we have got, I thought this was interesting. This is a PicoRC. Lots of bits of plastic. So this basically takes a USB-C, and into it we have a power switch on off. Comme ça. And then this goes to our main board. And these are all the cables to plug into all the little cabley bits. I think we ought to make this up. Now you might see over here something else I've done during the interim. I've 3D printed a little cover for this hole, which is known as the ashtray, and I didn't have any black filament, so I printed it red to go with, it's not quite the same red, but neither is that the same red, but that just blocks the hole up. Maybe we could put a volume knob in there or something, I don't know. Things to think about for the future. So let's go to PicoRC.com and figure out how to put this together. Okay, so this is PicoRC, USB-C power adapter for BBC Micro. This looks like what we've got. The adapter lets you power your BBC Micro via USB-C. Replaces the original PSU and uses common USB chargers instead. Highlights non-destructive and reversal. Use USB charger or power bank. Low cost, efficient and reliable. So kit assembly, right, observe the parts. Yes, we have got all of those. Nothing too tricky in this kit, all basic through-hole stuff. Insert the terminal blades, making sure that they are straight. Push the power switch into the blanking plate, okay. And then offer the switch up onto the PCB. Make sure it's a right angle. That's pretty much it. Pre-flight checks. So use a multimeter, check for dead shorts between each rail and ground. If all is good, plug in a US cable, turn on and check the voltages. So we've got ground, we've got plus 5 volts and we've got minus 5 volts. And that is the color coding of the wires. Okay, that looks pretty straightforward. So that's going to mount it, and then we plug the thing. That's the minus 5 volts there. That's purple on the current PSU. Now, I'm not planning to throw the current power supply away. I will have a go at repairing it, but not in this video. Okay, I think we have the measure of it. Back at the bench. So that's our blanking plate. That goes on the back. This is going to go through here. Like that, and then that is going to go on here. So just dry fitting it like that. And we need to verify that that is at 90 degrees, but not for the time being, because first of all we want to put in these spade terminals, and they go in quite nicely and they are pretty stable, so that should be quite easy to solder. Speaking of which, let's just turn the soldering iron on. So I'm doing this inside the box so that things don't fly away and escape, because we've had that issue before. Now, it's nice that the SMD is pre-soldered on this. I would not like to try and solder one of those USB-C connectors, because I can barely even see the contacts. I don't know who made this board. You can get these done by PCB Way, of course. Our lovely and wonderful sponsor. I always wonder what components that are not fitted are about. And a white PCB always makes it very hard to see the underlying traces. These are actually quite sharp, as I suppose they would be. Okay, so now we'll grab our leaded solder. We are instructed to use leaded solder. So what I'm going to do, actually, clunk, 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 is mount it in here. There we go, that will just make it stable for soldering. There we go, that's done. So here is a protractor, which is a thing of degrees. It's actually a flight planning protractor. That doesn't particularly matter, so it's going to show us 90 degrees when we put this in. There's nowhere to actually get in there, but we can get in here. Okay, that is 90 degrees. And I'll just put that in there to hold it. Okay, so that's our back panel. We have our micro USB and we have our connectors on the inside. So I'll just clamp that in there and we will clean it off with our patented toothbrush. So there we go. Let us just do a safety check. So we are looking for shorts between ground and -5 volts and ground and +5 volts and -5 volts and +5 volts. Looks good to me. So now let's give it a try. This is a USB-C, so let's plug that in. Okay, I'm going to take one of these ground signals. This is really just so that it doesn't accidentally slip and short something out by the probes slipping. Power it up, and we've got an LED that has come on. That's a good sign. And it's gone off, I guess. So we want to go from 0 volts to +5 volts. There we go, 5.09, and that should be -4.9, and it goes off. Yeah. Right, I accidentally turned off the camera instead of turning off the switch, which was bloody silly. I may well have just lost all that footage of assembling this. Bum, in a word. So I've taken the lid off. We need to take this all out. I'm going to undo that and reconnect those, but not for the moment. Purple is -5. There's nuts and bolts supposed to hold that in, which I don't have, so I'm going to need to source some of those. These screws are rusty old things anyway, so it will be good not to use them. I did look at replacing them with some M3 screws, but they don't appear to actually be M3. At least they seem to be about the right size, but the thread pitch is not the same. So that can come out, and we've got to thread the mains switch, plug, through the hole. There we go. I will have a go at fixing this at some point, but I've no idea how these things work, and we have to disassemble it again. So, another time, another video. Right, for this apparently is a floppy disk controller, I have learned. So we've got this little washer, a standoff, and 2 screws. Now the screw goes into here, and the washer goes onto the top. And that just screws it into the standoff. So I think I may have a socket that is the right size. That'll do. Right, don't over tighten it. And that is going to go on here. So what I shall do is tape it down. That should hold it. Certainly enough to put the screw in. There we go. So that is in. We've got 3 ground wires. 3 ground wires. They go to. They're the same length. No, they're not. This is the long one. There we go. This is our -5 volts. And then these are our plus 5 volts. This is the long one. There we go. Now, it probably could use a cable tie. So, what colour cable tie shall we use? I think we'll use a nice bright green. Right, now we don't know if the board itself works. So I guess this is going to be where we find out. Now, we're still going through that. USB is plugged in. Here we go, moment of truth. 3, 2, 1. Right, comes. We've got a flashing cursor. And then nothing. Well, it worked for a bit. Let's try that again. Flashing cursor. Maybe stuff is actually off the screen. Can't do anything because the keyboard is not plugged in and we don't have a speaker plugged in. But that's staying there now. That at least is a good sign. We have signs of life. Now this is the volume control for the speaker, which is, I think, a 10K pot. We can actually take that off. And I was thinking maybe I could make a version of this with a hole in it and put basically a 10K pot in that, assuming that there is space for it to go, and then I'd have a volume knob. I don't know what this switch is for. I can't see that it did anything other than maybe a loudspeaker on off, but it's a bloody big switch for a loudspeaker on off. And why would you drill a hole in? I mean, there are so many holes in this, it's probably not an issue, but why would you drill a hole in this just for a switch for the speaker on off? You could have put it in here. It would have been much more sensible to put it in there. It's still going, it still hasn't crashed, so that's a good sign. Right, I'm going to reconnect that and I'm going to take this off. I do like the little power light there. Then we'll plug the keyboard and stuff in and see if we can actually make it work properly. I've soldered this on. I haven't put the screws back in yet. I've used white wire again just to match the original. So I've now got our BNC to RCA, which we can put on the back. Like that. And a regular yellow video RCA connector cable going in there like that. So we should see what we saw before. Let's go back up here. 3, 2, 1. Yep, we have our flashing cursor. So that's good. We can now screw it back together, plug the keyboard in and see if we get any further. Okay, so the keyboard's plugged in. I've soldered the speaker back together, just taking that gash bit of wire off. You can see how much cable was cut out. That wasn't cut out by me, I just trimmed the end off. But yeah. So full volume, of course we've got the speaker control there, but I don't know if it's going to work at the moment, so let's plug the USB back in and let's see what we get. Ah, and that is excellent. I don't know BBC Basic well enough to do any shortcuts, so this will have to do. Look at that. Well, next time I think we will try and put the floppy drive back together, clean the keyboard and see what else we can do exploring this machine. So stay tuned, come back. Thank you for watching. Please check out my Patreon if you would like to support the channel, and I will see you next time. See ya. Bye.